This coming Saturday, July 26th, is National Aunts and Uncles Day here in the States. So in honor of all the aunts and uncles, I am talking today about the shoresh Dalet Vav Dalet, which has to do with aunts, uncles, and all kinds of loved ones. And also a related shoresh Yod Dalet Dalet. There was an Aunts and Uncles Day, but now that I do, I want to honor my beloved aunts and uncles by talking about the shoresh Dalet Vav Dalet and its related shoresh Yod Dalet Dalet. These two shorashim have mostly to do with loved ones, and while they may not look related, I believe that they are. Firstly, there is research that suggests that many primitive words in Hebrew stem from a two-letter root that later developed into one or many three-letter roots. Most of this is way over my head, but I do see many roots, many shorashim that either have a vav or a yod in the middle, or sometimes they'll have like a doubled letter. And then there's a related root that has a letter, that letter was part of a template, and then it through like back formation, it became a part of the shoresh. So here's one example. We've got the word makom, which means place or location. And the root, the shoresh of makom, is kof vav mem, which has to do with existing or setting up or kind of being in a place. But then we get the verb lemakem, which means to locate somebody or something. And so that actually has the shoresh mem kof mem. It loses the vav that was part of the original shoresh, and now we have mem kof mem. That first mem of makom was just a part of the template, but now it has become a part of a new shoresh. Similarly, there was another ancient verb, lehachel, meaning to begin or start, and this verb is considered to have the shoresh chet lamed lamed, even though we don't ever actually hear the second lamed. And there was a noun based on that shoresh, tchila, which meant beginning. It had a taf at the beginning, which was just a part of the template, the noun template. And what ended up happening is, again, this one got back formed, and people started to think of the verb as actually having a taf in its shoresh. And so that's how we got the verb lehatchil, with a taf chet lamed. So these are the only two that I can think of off the top of my head. If I did research, I would actually find many, many, many more. But I just wanted to show these examples to show that it is not totally out of the blue to say that Dalet Vav Dalet and Yod Dalet Dalet are related shorashim, especially since they have almost the exact same meaning, which is that of a loved one, or a friend, someone very close to you. Now, Dalet Vav Dalet also has a completely separate meaning, which is that of like a container for liquids. So we will talk about both of these meanings. Of the 984 verses in the Tanakh that contain words from one of these two shorashim, 913 of them, that's over 92%, are about King David. And King David was considered to be beloved by Hashem, and so it makes sense that his name comes from this shorash. Now, the majority of the spellings, about 3/4 of the time, the name David is spelled Dalet Vav Dalet. The rest of the time, it's spelled with a Yod in there. So Dalet Vav Yod Dalet. So there's a couple exceptions here and there, but the vast majority of the earlier books in the Tanakh spell the name David without the Yod, and it's mostly in the Ketuvim, in the last third of the Tanakh, that his name is spelled with a Yod. So Dalet Vav Dalet is considered to be the traditional spelling of the name of King David. And while we're on this note, we in English say King David. Like the word king comes before his name, as most titles do in English. But in Hebrew, we always refer to him as David HaMelech, David the king. And so David was Hashem's beloved. He was chosen to be king even though he was not the oldest child and all sorts of other reasons that he should not have become king. But he did, and we attribute that to his being Hashem's beloved. And the rest of the words with either of these two shorashim mostly have to do with a person who is beloved or even the emotion of love. So Dod is the word that means a male loved one. And this can be a romantic partner, or it can be somebody in your family, such as an uncle, or even a more generic kinsman. If you ask an Israeli today what Dod means, they will tell you it means uncle. The meaning of it or the usage has really narrowed or specialized. The romantic meaning has really fallen out of use. And you can see that in the Tanakh, it was spelled with or without a vav. And there doesn't really seem to be much rhyme or reason to it. Nowadays in modern Hebrew, it is always spelled with the vav. And even though the word dod, meaning my romantic partner, is not used anymore in modern Hebrew, Jewish Hebrew speakers still will often use the phrase ani ledodi vedodi li. It means I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine. And this is often seen on items related to a marriage or a wedding. So this is a picture of our ketubah. It's the traditional marriage contract. Ours is not so traditional because it's in English and in Hebrew. But this is a wedding contract that anybody who gets married in a Jewish ceremony gets one of these. And so we can see that down here on this side, it says in Hebrew, ani ledodi vedodi li, and up on the top here, it says, I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine. And I also have it on this Kiddush cup, which is the Kiddush cup that we drank from at our wedding. And Doda means aunt. And this basically just takes the masculine word and you add a kamatz and a hey on the end, and you've got the feminine version of it. This word only shows up 3 times in the Tanakh, and twice it's actually when it is, if you go by the JPS translation, it is more specific as to being your father's sister or your uncle's wife. But in the third instance of it, it just is translated as aunt. So, and also all 3 times this noun, so if you look for this word in the Tanakh, you won't see it written as Dalet Vav Dalet Hey, because all 3 times that I saw it, it was it had a pronominal ending on it. And whenever you have a word that ends with a kamatz hey, and it gets any kind of an ending, it doesn't have to be a pronominal ending, that hey almost always turns into a taf before you add the ending. So twice it was his aunt, and so it's dodato. And once it was your aunt, and so it's dodatcha. And these three instances also do not have the vav for doda. That O sound is just a cholam chaser. But in modern Hebrew, you would always put the vav. So the word cousin only appears twice in the Tanakh, and it's both times it is my cousin. So it has that pronominal ending on it. And so it shows up as ben dodi. And ben means son, and dodi means my uncle. So it is literally son of my uncle, which is my cousin. And again, I feel like a broken record. Both of these times, they do not use a vav for the O sound. But in modern Hebrew, you would put the vav. Now, an interesting thing happens in modern Hebrew. If you are talking about a male cousin, which clearly that was a male cousin that they were talking about in the Tanakh, because it's ben dod. But and so again, in modern Hebrew, a male cousin is ben dod. A female cousin is bat doda. And this is interesting because, of course, you can have a male cousin who is related to you through your aunt, through like your father's sister or your mother's sister. And you can have a female cousin who is related to you through your uncle. But when it's a male cousin, they always say ben dod. And a female cousin is bat doda. Unless you really need to specify, no, this is the daughter of my parents' uncle, you just call her bat doda. And that doesn't necessarily mean the daughter of my mother's sister or my father's sister. It just means my cousin, and it means a female cousin, and it's not as specific as it sounds. Before I move on to other words and other meanings, I want to mention that the Academia says that there is a word, dod rabba or dod gadol, which means your great uncle. I would have said great uncle in English. I understand that some people would call this a grand uncle. This is the brother of your grandparent. And likewise, on the feminine side, we can have a doda rabta or doda gdola. And that is a great aunt or a grand aunt. Now, I mentioned these words to one of my consultants, and she gave me a look. She had never heard such a word and thought it was a really strange word and wasn't exactly even sure what it meant. But she admittedly said that she barely even knew her grandparents, let alone any of their siblings. So maybe this is just not a word that she was super familiar with. I mean, I know that there are a lot of people who get confused as to all of the various, second cousin twice removed and stuff like that. People do get confused unless they're really into genealogy. So maybe this is just not a very common term. In the Tanakh, we have the word yadid, and it means beloved one. Although I wrote it here the way it should be in its absolutive state, so this is just yadid. But in the Tanakh, we never see it that way. We always see it either with a pronominal ending or in smichut, with like the beloved one of somebody. And in those cases, it's always yedid with a shwa under that first yod instead of a kamatz. In modern Hebrew, Yadid means just friend, and so maybe not quite as beloved as it did in the past. This is not a word that I use very often. I have heard it quite a few times, but I think I learned chaver and chavera way earlier in life, and so it's just not the word that I ever actually, it never occurs to me to use this word. If I say friend, I'm just going to use chaver. But I do hear it said. I do hear it, I read it. And in modern times, we also have a feminine noun, yedidut. We can tell it's feminine instantly because it ends with ut, and it just means friendship. And then there is also a verb, a hitpa'el verb, lehit yaded, and that means to become friends with somebody. And you use im with that, lehit yaded im mishu. And notice that lehit yaded has 2 yods in it, and that's because they want to make it clear that that's a very, I mean, it's a modern word, but it's with a modern spelling. They put the 2 yods only to make it clear that it's a consonantal yod. It sounds like y rather than sounding like the vowel e. And so one last word is dud, which it has a totally, completely different meaning. We've seen this before, but it always is. I always try to see if there is some kind of relationship that I can figure out between 2 different meanings of a word, and I don't know. I did not find one here, but the Academia does say that this word dud does share the same shoresh with dod and all the other words. And so this word only shows up 5 times in the Tanakh, and in all of its meanings, it has it means some kind of a container for, usually for liquids. So a kettle, a basket, or a cauldron. In modern times, it means a water tank, and I almost always hear it specifically meant like a water tank that's kind of like a water heater, whatever kind of water heater it's going to be. So it's a tank full of water that we're trying to heat it up for whatever reason. And in the Tanakh, this word is mentioned twice in the plural, and once it is spelled dudim, and once it is spelled dvadim. And in modern Hebrew, dvadim seems to be the only acceptable plural form of dud. And dud shemesh is specifically a solar water heater that is really, really common in Israel. You see them on the tops of all of the apartment buildings. There's just, if you look at any roof of an apartment building, you'll see a bunch of little tanks up there. And it's all solar heating, and it's kind of interesting because you do still have to turn it on maybe a half an hour before you're planning on using the hot water, and then you I guess should turn it off when you're done. Although we stayed in 2 different homes that had a dud shemesh, and both of them had like a timer switch. So you turn it on and it's on for maybe, you turn it on and it'll stay on for maybe an hour or so, and that first half an hour it's busy circulating the water. I'm not quite sure how it works, and then you've got enough hot water for your shower or for your laundry or for whatever you need your hot water for. All right, folks, that is it. Now you know all of the words in the Tanakh and in modern Hebrew related to the shorashim Dalet Vav Dalet and Yod Dalet Dalet. And if you're in the States and you have aunts and uncles, definitely give them a call this Saturday and tell them how beloved they are to you. As usual, If you have any questions or feedback, please leave them in the comments. Hit like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to see more. Lehitraot, Papa Ama.